Chapter 13. 3:45 p.m. Stefan walked into his kitchen, happy to escape the emotional energy of the other two. Coffee made for a great excuse. Sam was an interesting development, as was Brant's reaction to their meeting. Stefan wouldn't have said she was Brant's type, but then she didn't fit his own type either, and he found her fascinating. That she'd seen into and communicated on the etheric field was impressive all over again. He stayed in the kitchen until the coffee dripped to a full pot. Pouring 3 cups, he carried them out to the sitting area. "Anyone need cream or sugar?" "No, black is fine. Thank you." Sam reached for her cup and huddled over it, as if needing the warmth. Stefan considered her for a moment, before sitting on a chair between them. He understood power positions, and being between these two wouldn't be his normal choice, yet they obviously had issues. "Sam, are you always cold?" Both Brant and Sam turned to stare at him. He allowed a small smile. Not a trick question, just a simple inquiry. Sam nodded. "Yes, I am. And that's getting worse with every vision." "Is there any particular time when you are colder than others?" Her head cocked to one side, Stefan studied the fleeting expressions washing over her face as she considered his questions. She had no guile, this girl. She was a newborn babe in the world of ageless freaks. He sighed inwardly. She needed a lot from him. Her survival potential without it didn't look good. She was powerful but open. Her energy shone and flashed with no control. Worse, she didn't even seem to know there was such a thing. She bled energy like a hemophiliac bled blood. She shook her head. "No, I don't think so. I'm cold all the time." Settling deeper into his chair, Stefan ran a few basic tests. First, he checked her life force. Strong, this girl was a fighter. Next, he checked her aura. Right now, it spat in several directions while being conspicuously reticent about going in Brant's direction. Interesting. She didn't want Brant to see too much. Stefan smiled to himself. While everyone was busy not looking at each other, Stefan took advantage of the uneasy energy and opened his inner eye. He turned to focus on Sam, and found Sam staring at him. He reared back in surprise. She frowned at him. "What's the matter?" Stefan quickly switched to his normal sight to find she still stared at him. Could it be? Could she flip between the two views, or did she not know the difference? With a quick glance at Brant, who didn't appear to notice anything, Stefan decided to ask her, "Do you recognize when you are using your inner eye?" His question seemed to surprise her, only she answered readily enough. "Yes. I use both equally, and switch between them easily." That made sense given what he'd just seen. It also elevated her skills another notch. This was a very interesting woman. Without any formal training, she'd found her own way. Without anyone to say right or wrong, she'd developed in ways that worked for her. Stefan could count on one hand the number of psychics the world over who could switch their inner vision as simply. "Brant has told me something about your visions." Stefan stretched out his legs, crossing them, and with a quick glance at Brant he centered on Sam. "Maybe you could explain to me exactly what happens to you." Sam winced. She stared at her coffee cup. It didn't take long to fill him in. Stefan didn't interrupt her. He waited until she ran down before asking questions. "So you have no trigger that you know of? You have no awareness outside of the vision when you're in one, and you've been having these particular visions during the night?" "Right. There have been a couple other odd insights as well." Quickly she filled him in on when she thought the killer had been hunting a new victim, and then the car accident where she'd seen Stefan. Stefan considered what he'd heard. "What would you like from me?" Sam's expression became a mix of contradictions. She looked hopeful, confused, and even full of trepidation. Stefan leaned forward. What did she want? I was wondering if you could help me. Stefan shifted, surprised. That's not what he'd been expecting her to say. Help? In what way? Sam glanced toward Brant. Was she gaining strength from his presence, or expecting criticism? Stefan filed away her action to contemplate later. The visions are extremely violent. My recovery takes quite a while. I'm wondering. Yes, he encouraged. Well. She stopped again, as if gathering her thoughts. Then the words rushed out. The visions are hard on my system. My blood loss is huge. I was skinny before. Now the pounds are falling off. I can hardly sleep. Her stream of chatter slowed down. I'm scared these visions will kill me, she admitted softly. Stefan didn't know what to say. She was right to be concerned. Normally, the psychics with physically manifested visions don't show the blood loss to a dangerous level, at least not for long. She didn't seem to hear the last part, for she leaned forward, her eyes intent on his face. There are others like me. Absolutely. Some people will wake up with blood on their hands and not always know why. In this case, they've had an empathetic episode. He rubbed the side of his temple. Some people walk in the gray area between life and death and will become comatose, depending on how long they stay there. Some have died because they couldn't return to their bodies in time. With a quick glance at Brant, who sat quietly listening, he refocused on Sam. I've often discussed with Brant the number of misdiagnosed patients in mental hospitals who have psychic talents they never knew they had. Sam did a double take. Are you serious? Brant nodded. Unfortunately. Control. Sam jumped on that term. That's what I need to do. I need to learn how to control my talents and to disconnect from the visions. The last time, I managed to keep one foot in both realities, only for the briefest of moments, then I lost it. Right. There are several techniques. But it won't happen overnight. It will take practice. I can help, but it will take effort on your part. Sam smiled. That's fine. The more control, the more I can use my talents to benefit others. Brant interjected for the first time. What do you want to do with them? A becoming pink blush started at her neck, washed upward. Stefan watched Brant's mesmerized gaze follow the color trail. No doubt about it, he had it bad. Sam licked her lips and Stefan almost laughed aloud. Brant looked like he was choking on something. I want to help people. Or maybe animals. She told them about the incident with the dog at the hospital. I don't know yet the best way to help. Partly because I don't know my own abilities, and therefore don't know what is possible to do. I just know that I don't want to hide, and that I don't want to be helpless. Interesting. First, let's set up time to work on your control. We'll sort out what your talents are, which are strongest and which need developing. You can go from there. Both Brant and Sam nodded. That makes good sense. Brant glanced at his watch. We'll need to go soon. Stefan took note of the color surrounding the two. Their energy danced around each other, close enough to blend, yet staying separate, at least for now. Long fingers of sunshine touched and warmed the atmosphere. Stefan watched the sunlight dance with their energies. Sam spoke again, interrupting his musings. Stefan, can I ask you about the vision where I saw you? What were you doing there with Louise? Stefan smiled. I knew her years ago, before she married. By the time I arrived, it was too late for her. All I could do to help was escort her to the other side. Escort? Brant's curiosity jumped out. You mentioned this before. Sam stared at him. Crossing to the other side. Death. Brant shifted in his seat, one eyebrow raised, listening. Sam turned back to Stefan. Was this an unusual occurrence for you? Stefan thought about it. It doesn't happen weekly or even monthly, but if there is a connection on any level, then I usually know what's happening. Were you close? Sam flushed. I don't mean to be personal, but when I was inside Louise, I felt different. Intriguing. I loved her. But she couldn't handle my life. Sam nodded, as if understanding what he meant. Maybe she did. What was Louise thinking about? Stefan admitted to being curious. He'd never experienced a psychic vision like hers. He studied Sam's face, searching for the truth. It's hard to say. My visions are overwhelmed with the physical trauma, though a little of their thoughts mix with mine. I don't remember much of hers, though. We were both more concerned with the car that wouldn't respond than the crash, the fire, you know. Sam held out her hands. That's about it, until I saw you. Then it was my thoughts. I wasn't sure whom you were talking to, Louise or me. She waited for his answer. He frowned. Louise mostly, trying to get her to leave her body. Until the end, when I was talking to you, because, at that point, you were holding her back. Understanding dawned in Sam's eyes. That makes sense now. She cocked her head sideways. Do you know how she died? She was in a car accident. Her vehicle drove off the highway at Emerson Point. You know that? Brant shook his head. Sure, I saw her memories. One of the last things to happen before death is a rewind of the movie of your life. He glanced at Sam. Don't you see that part? She shook her head. No. Mine are always violent deaths, and they don't have much time. She sat up straight. Could you see why her car went over the cliff? Stefan stared at Sam. She almost vibrated with energy. No, I came in later. What about you? Only that her brakes weren't working. She pumped them hard. She shrugged. Then she went off the road. What connects you to your visions? Sam shifted uneasily. Usually violence. Lately it's been murder. Stefan studied her. You think Louise was murdered? I think so, yes. He frowned. Did you connect with the same killer in her case? I don't know. I think so. It's his energy on the car. At the time of her death. Just before. Sam rubbed her hands together to warm them up. No. As we went over the cliff, I thought I saw his signature. Once we crashed and burned, I wasn't looking at anything but the flames and then you. What does that mean to you? Brant interjected, sitting on the edge of his seat. I don't understand this energy signature stuff. Stefan explained. When you touch something, it leaves a bit of energy behind. This energy can dissipate quickly or hang around, depending on the energy of the person touching it and depending on how long the contact lasted. Brant jerked his head, urging them to continue. That still doesn't mean much to me. Are you saying this guy owned or drove the car? Or did he just work on it for a little bit? Both Sam and Stefan shook their heads. Stefan said, It's not that easy. No, Sam said. I'm not sure I can say very much about his energy in this case. I only saw it long enough to recognize it. For me, that means he's responsible for Louise's death. She wrinkled her nose at Brant. The how and whys, well, I thought that was your job. Except there's nothing left to investigate. The car burned to a crisp. 4:45 p.m. Brant and Sam drove to Parksville in almost total silence. Brant's mind crowded with all he had to mull over. He could only imagine what Sam was thinking. She'd set up the first session with Stefan in a several weeks' time. In the meantime, she had homework to do. Brant, on the other hand, had regular work to do. He turned into the vet's parking lot and pulled up beside her truck. Checking out the report on Louise Enderby was another priority. Stefan couldn't confirm that her brake line had been cut, yet he agreed that it was likely that she'd been murdered. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "Yes, I'm good. Better than I have been in a long time." She collected her purse. "In fact, I should go home and review everything I've learned." She shifted to leave. "Thanks for taking me." She opened the door and hopped out. "I'll talk to you later." "Thanks again." He walked around the truck to stand beside her. "Are you hungry? Do you want to go someplace to eat?" Sam stopped and considered his offer. "You know what? I think tonight I'd just like to be alone. My mind's a little overfull, and I'd like some time to digest everything." Brant nodded. "Maybe another time?" "Thanks, I'd like that." Brant didn't know if he should pin her down or not. He understood her wanting to be alone tonight. He was the one who didn't want to be alone. Still, she'd been through enough for one day. Yet he couldn't leave it like this, he needed more. "I could pick up something and come to your place tomorrow, if that works for you." Sam glanced back at him, startled. "That would be nice. Thank you." "Good. I'll call you with a time when I see how the day is going." He walked to his truck. "Remember," he said, frowning. "Be smart and stay alert. The killer is still trawling for victims." "How could I forget?" She frowned at him. "I'm the one with the insider knowledge. Remember? Speaking of which, let me know if anything new pops up." "Okay." "All right." Sam reversed her truck and pulled out of the parking lot in the direction of her home. Brant watched for a few minutes, then headed back home. He could retrieve his messages from there just as well as from the office. The house sounded hollow as he shut the front door behind him. Today was perfect for a cold beer and a medium-rare steak. Too bad he didn't have either in the house. By the time he'd showered, the coffee had finished dripping, and he'd decided on a hefty ham and cheese omelet with hash browns. Easy, doable, and fast. With a plate of hot steaming food, Brant clicked on the television. His stomach growled with hunger pangs. He dug in while listening to the local news. The police have issued a press release requesting the public's help in identifying the owner of this ring. The television screen flashed to a sketch of a ring with a 4-leaf clover pattern and missing one stone. Brant bolted to his feet. "What the hell?" He circled around the coffee table to get a closer look. No doubt about it. It was his sketch. His stomach warred with his nerves. How had the media gotten this picture? The announcer had said something about the police asking for help. The picture must have come from his department. From his office. Only not from him. Trying to be fair, Brant ran through those who knew about the ring. Basically everyone. He'd brought it out at the meeting, after explaining it could be connected to the killer he was hunting. He'd been trying to identify the owner, for Christ's sake. God damn it. He paced around the living room, his mind working furiously. He couldn't believe someone had jumped him on this. Surely that could only have been the captain, or someone on his team. But why? This wasn't even an official case. Sam's information was a tip, yet that's all it was. The others didn't even believe her. Damn it. This could blow up in the department's face. And put him into hot water. Few people were willing to own up to having a psychic help out. If the information wasn't any good, many people would be up for crucifying the idiots who brought in the psychic. And the psychic. Jesus, what about Samantha? His heart stopped beating. No. Sanity swept in. No, there was no way she could be identified by this. Relief sent his heart racing again. There could be serious repercussions. If Sam were right, and the killer saw this newscast, he'd be seriously wondering how the police knew about it. The killer could just laugh it off, or it might drive him into a killing fury. There was just no way to know. 8:05 p.m. The evening news rippled outward to another man, enjoying an evening alone in his apartment. Life is good. Bill walked to his refrigerator and pulled out a cold beer. Raising the bottle to the sky, he took a long swallow. The television blared from the other room. He heard something about the police asking for help, and walked to where he could see the broadcast. What the hell? The tall, slight man leaned forward, slamming the bottle down on the hewn wooden table beside the World War II airport model he was building. He stared at the picture on the screen. No way. No fucking way. How the hell did they know about his ring? He glared at the item still on his left hand. It had been his lucky ring for so long that he'd forgotten he still wore it. Pissed, he tore off the offending thing and threw it against the far wall. Why would anyone be searching for his ring? He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. What did they know? Could they have connected the ring to his women? No. He thought about it. No way anyone could connect the ring to his victims. The cops would be pounding on his door if they were that close. So who else? They couldn't have captured a picture from a camera, as he always wore gloves. Disturbed, he slouched into the couch. The newscaster's voice washed over him in a continuous drone. What had Bill missed? What could he possibly have forgotten? God damn it. No, there's no way anyone could know. He didn't make mistakes. In a dour mood, he drank his beer and went over every move he'd recently made. He shook his head, feeling better. He didn't miss anything. Unless the last woman had survived. He shot to his feet, disturbed. Not possible. Surely not. She'd been cold when he'd left her. She had to be dead. Except her death hadn't been reported. The problem was, anyone could have seen the ring. He'd worn it as long as he could remember. Someone was sure to have noticed it somewhere along the way. He pondered the implications. First, he needed to make sure that woman had indeed died. Then he needed to find a similar ring, and wear it to fool anyone who may have thought he'd had on the ring the police were asking about. That way, when anyone double-checked, it would seem like they'd made a mistake. And last, he needed to never, ever leave a victim until he was sure she was dead. June 19th at 9:35 a.m. Sam finally slept through the night. No nightmares, no visions, just sleep. Stefan's homework had helped. Lying in bed, feeling rested for the first time in several days, she rolled over and curled deeper into her blankets. Relaxation rolled through her. If it weren't for the animals waiting for her, she wouldn't bother getting out of bed. Then room service was a little lacking when you lived alone. Moving easily through her morning routine, Sam made it to the kitchen and fed her canine family before they had a chance to get upset at the wait. Soldier ate, then stood at the front door. Sam opened it and stepped out on the porch. He moved stiffly under her watchful gaze as he managed the steps and the few feet to a clump of trees. While she relaxed inside with her morning tea, the two dogs started a ruckus. Sam frowned. Soldier's bark was hoarse, almost a cross between a growl and a bark. Like one long unused. She walked toward the door and heard the vehicle. Instantly her nerves reacted. She rarely had visitors, but it was only recently that the sound of an approaching vehicle brought out a sense of dread. Her tension eased when she recognized Price Coulson's car. The rent wasn't due for another couple weeks, and her landlord came about once a month to check up on her. "Good morning. How are you today?" She opened the door wider to let him in. She did it every time he came, and every time he refused to step inside. A married man in a single woman's house wasn't proper, according to his generational rules. The wife sent over a loaf of bread and some cookies for you. His face creased into well-worn wrinkles. Also wanted to make sure you're doing okay. Of course I'm fine. Sam leaned easily against the doorway. God, she was becoming a good liar. How sad was that? The old man glanced at her, his sharp intellect shining beneath the heavy folds of his eyelids. It's very isolated here. Aren't you worried about intruders? Shaking her head, Sam hastened to reassure him. No. I've always been comfortable living out in the country. He shoved his gnarled fingers into his jean pockets. Now that may be, only it's not the same world today as it was a few decades ago. Some bad people are out there. There always have been. The communication systems of today are better, so we hear about more cases. Aye. True enough. Just last night, the news said the police were searching for the owner of an odd-looking ring. He turned to look at the calm waters of the lake. The wife, she said it looked like a devil's ring, what with the snake twisting through a garden. A ring? Yeah. You don't have television down here, so you wouldn't have heard about it. Sam went cold inside. They said the police wanted this guy? Just that they were looking for the owner of the ring, so they could talk to him. Almost numb with the ice that had settled into her limbs, Sam shook her head. Then it's probably nothing. He pulled out one hand to run through the white fluff around his ears. I told the wife that. But well, she worries. That was the reason for his visit. The pair of them were concerned about her. Unaccustomed warmth melted through her. This was a new feeling. She savored the sensation. Someone actually cared enough to worry. And the Coulsons didn't even know her. She shook her head in bemusement. Are you sure you won't come in for a cup of tea? You can tell me all about it inside. Price shook his head. No. I promised Mary that I wouldn't be longer than a few minutes. He twisted, pointing out Soldier. I didn't know you had a guard dog. Mary will worry less knowing you have him down here. Sam's lips twitched at the thought. I don't know how much help he'll be. He's with me because he's recovering from surgery and needed a home to heal and to be rehabilitated. The old man's gaze sharpened. Is he dangerous? His wrinkles rearranged downward. Don't really want something dangerous living here. He's too old to be rehabilitated. He stared at the dog. A bullet might be kinder all around. Sam refused to take offense, understanding his old-timer ways. After all, he didn't say anything different than the vets themselves had expressed. No, he was mistreated and then hit by a car. Since he's been with me, he spent his time healing. I don't think he's dangerous. She couldn't help crossing her fingers. He'll be a great deterrent for anyone out to cause trouble. I think he's a trained watchdog. At least that's what one policeman told me. The older man's shoulders relaxed slightly. That's good then. If the police and vets are involved, then he's probably fine. He nodded, as if satisfied. Mary will be happy to hear this. A little later, Sam, with cell phone in hand, watched his pickup head up the hill. Dear God. The ring had been on television. Surely not the same ring. Why would Detective Sutherland do that? What else had the broadcast said? She didn't quite understand how she felt about this development. Hello. Hi, Brant. This is Sam. Did you release a picture of the ring to the media? A hefty pause stretched out over the line. I didn't, no. One of the members of the department must have. The first I knew about it was when I saw it on television last night. The whole point of telling you about the ring was to help. I just didn't expect to have it released to the media. I guess I'm more surprised than anything. She took a deep breath. The thing is, I'd really like to keep my name out of this. I've taken care to build a new life here. I don't mind helping, but I'd just as soon do it privately. Understood. I'll make sure your name isn't connected. I don't know who contacted the media, but I will find out. His voice came across strong and determined, and that helped reassure her a little more. Sam rang off and went to get ready for work. A quick brush of her hair and a check to make sure her face was clean, then Sam grabbed her keys and purse and headed for work. She couldn't quite stop the flutter of nervousness inside. Why had it never crossed her mind that the police might go public with her information? Why had she never once considered the risk that her identity would be exposed? And why had this realization come when it was too late to change her mind?